The date is the 4th of February 2026, and the atmosphere in London has shifted from the frantic energy of a tabloid scandal to the heavy, suffocating silence of a state crisis. Tonight, the fate of Archie and Lilibet has entered territory that transcends celebrity gossip or royal feuding. Buckingham Palace has confirmed, through the starkest of back channels and encoded diplomatic cables, that both children have been formally removed from Meghan Markle's custodial influence. This was not a celebrity breakup played out in the tabloids with weeping sources and paparazzi photos, nor was it a standard custody dispute resolved in a family court with lawyers arguing over visitation rights. It was a state operation executed with the precision of a military maneuver and the finality of a guillotine. The trigger for this unprecedented intervention was a sealed legal brief delivered at dawn to the private quarters of Windsor Castle. It detailed a secret move by Meghan that crossed the final red line: the quiet, unexplained withdrawal of Archie and Lilibet from their schools in an attempt to erase their institutional footprint entirely in preparation for a move to a non-extradition jurisdiction. Sources confirm that Princess Anne convened an unscheduled crisis summit within the hour of receiving the intelligence. She carried with her a red folder marked immediate custodial breach, a designation usually reserved for threats to the line of succession or the physical safety of the sovereign. She didn't ask for permission to act, she demanded it. By 10:20 in the morning, Prince William had invoked a dormant law known as the Edwardian Protocol to seize control of the royal lineage. Today, we are taking you inside the contents of that red folder. We are revealing the secret Dubai deal that forced the crown's hand, and we are exposing Operation Dandelion, the mission to bring the children home. To understand the severity of the crown's response, one must look at the event that set the clock ticking. The crisis began on January 31 in Santa Barbara, California. An administrator at the elite private school attended by the Sussex children, a woman who had signed non-disclosure agreements thicker than a phone book, sat down at her desk to process the morning's attendance logs. She noticed a discrepancy that sent a chill through the administration. Neither 7-year-old Archie nor 5-year-old Lilibet had been enrolled for the spring term. There was no transfer request to another accredited institution, no notification of homeschooling registration, and no communication from the parents. It was a complete, unexplained withdrawal. When the school attempted to contact the Sussex estate via the emergency numbers on file, they were met with a wall of silence. The administrator flagged the file with the subject line, "No show, immediate concern," and escalated it to the school's board, who in turn contacted their liaison at the British consulate in Los Angeles. This wasn't just a missed day or a long vacation, it was a disappearance. Royal education liaisons, who are tasked with monitoring the development of children in the line of succession, regardless of their location, found their calls blocked. Private pediatric appointments, scheduled months in advance at Cedars-Sinai, were suddenly canceled without explanation. The Palace Intelligence Network, which maintains a discreet but constant watch over the family members, realized within hours that this was not a random administrative error. It was a calculated extraction. Meghan wasn't just hiding the children, she was erasing their institutional existence. The realization that the children had been pulled from the grid triggered an alert that went straight to the desk of the Princess Royal, bypassing all lower channels. When Princess Anne arrived at Windsor Castle, the air was thick with tension. She walked into the private meeting room where King Charles was waiting, looking pale and weary. Witnesses say she didn't bother with pleasantries or protocol. She slammed the red folder onto the mahogany table with enough force to rattle the antique teacups. She told the king that Meghan was not just walking away from duty, she was walking away from those children's future. The file she presented contained explosive intelligence that painted a picture of a mother preparing to sever all ties with the past, including the royal identity of her own son and daughter, to facilitate a commercial rebranding that would treat them as assets rather than heirs. The first piece of evidence in the folder was financial, and it was damning. Forensic accountants had uncovered documents proving that Meghan had dissolved a £6.3 million trust fund that had been originally created by the late Queen Elizabeth II to secure the children's education in the United Kingdom. This money, ring-fenced for their future within the royal sphere and meant to ensure they remained connected to their heritage, had been liquidated and moved into a nebulous offshore holding company. The second piece of evidence was even more terrifying to the courtiers. It was a copy of a signed non-disclosure agreement between Meghan and a Dubai-based media financier. The contract was explicit. It requested the removal of all prior familial associations before the launch of Meghan's new solo brand. The implication was clear. The children were being rebranded. They were to be stripped of their Windsor connection and repackaged as accessories to Meghan's new global identity as a solo icon, free from the constraints of the monarchy, but heavily reliant on the monetization of their image. The third pillar of the dossier was an internal directive from Archwell, leaked by a disgruntled former staffer. It ordered all references to Archie and Lilibet to be scrubbed from Netflix and Spotify marketing materials by the second quarter of 2026. This was not done to protect their privacy, but to clear the rights for a new exclusive media deal that would sell access to their lives to the highest bidder without the interference of their royal relatives. Legal advisors in the room reviewed the documents and labeled the behavior deliberate custodial abandonment. It appeared that Meghan was clearing the deck for a massive rebrand, and the children, with their royal baggage and potential for diplomatic entanglement, were being edited out of the script until they could be reintroduced as products. The palace realized that if they did not act immediately, the children would disappear into a shadow world of commercial exploitation and diplomatic limbo, potentially moved to a non-extradition country where the crown's reach would be limited. Prince William arrived at the meeting later that afternoon, storming in from an economic summit in Manchester, his helicopter having landed on the lawns of Windsor just minutes before. He read the final page of the dossier, his face hardening into a mask of fury that those present said they had never seen before. He reportedly looked up at the room and declared that this was no longer about Meghan. It was about the survival of two children emotionally, legally, and historically. The next morning, William took a step that had not been taken since the abdication crisis of 1936. He invoked Appendix 4 of the Royal Succession Stabilization Act, a clause known as the Edwardian Protocol. This dormant piece of legislation states that in cases where royal minors are at risk of erasure, displacement, or exploitation that threatens the dignity of the sovereign, the Crown shall assume structural guardianship to ensure stability, heritage, and continuity. The vote in the Royal Advisory Council was unanimous. The Crown was taking the children back. The response was swift, brutal, and coordinated across multiple continents. The first step was a passport freeze. Archie and Lilibet's international travel rights were immediately suspended via diplomatic channels. The Home Office revoked their ability to travel on any passport other than a diplomatic one held by the Crown. They could no longer cross international borders without the dual authorization of the Princess Royal and the Crown's Child Welfare Council. This effectively trapped them within the jurisdiction where the Crown could reach them or prevented them from being moved to a jurisdiction where they could not. The second step was an image shield. The palace issued a freeze on all commercial usage of the children's names, likenesses, or royal branding. Meghan's rumored plan to launch a Sussex Kitchen kids brand backed by Qatari investors was dead on arrival. The legal notice made it clear that any entity attempting to monetize the children would face the full weight of the British legal system and sanctions from the Commonwealth. The third step was financial. Banking regulators in the UK and Canada moved to freeze accounts associated with MA Holding, a shell company that intelligence suggested Meghan had set up to funnel the children's potential earnings. The money was locked down, inaccessible to her lawyers or her business managers. But the most dramatic element of the response was physical. A private jet chartered by the UK Foreign Office touched down quietly at Santa Barbara Airport in the dead of night. The mission was codenamed Operation Dandelion. On board were not soldiers, but child welfare officers, a royal legal envoy bearing documents signed by the High Court, and a pediatric trauma specialist. Their orders were clear. Document the conditions of the children, ensure legal compliance, and prepare for extraction, should it become necessary under the terms of the guardianship order. As the operation unfolded, the fallout in Los Angeles was immediate and catastrophic for Meghan's standing. Tyler Perry, who had long been viewed as the couple's protector and godfather to Lilibet, reportedly demanded answers. When he learned about the notices from the palace regarding the children's welfare notices, Meghan had allegedly hidden from him while asking for his support. He distanced himself. A leaked voicemail, now deleted, allegedly captured him asking why he hadn't been told the truth, his voice thick with betrayal. Oprah Winfrey, another key ally, also went silent, allegedly furious that her name was still being used to justify parenting decisions she had no part in and which now looked like exploitation. The wall of celebrity protection crumbled as the reality of the situation became clear. This wasn't a family feud, it was a child welfare crisis. Hollywood agents began whispering that Meghan had become a Class 1 liability. The narrative shifted overnight. She was no longer seen as the protective mother fighting a rigid system. She was viewed as a commercial exploiter willing to use her children as leverage in a failing business deal. Meghan tried to pivot, pitching a solo parenting docuseries to networks, framing herself as a mother fighting for her children against a powerful empire, but the buyers vanished. Executives realized that you cannot sell a show about children that the British Crown has just effectively seized. The risk was too high, the optics too toxic. The fortress of celebrity support that Meghan had built around herself evaporated, leaving her isolated in Montecito with a legal storm gathering on her doorstep. Back in the United Kingdom, the emotional center of the crisis shifted to the next generation. On February 1st, Princess Charlotte appeared alongside her mother, Princess Catherine, at a charity event for the St. David's Trust. It was a routine engagement, but the atmosphere was charged. The press pack was larger than usual, sensing that the family was closing ranks. Unprompted, the young princess stepped forward to the press line. Holding a small, hand-stitched journal with the word hope embroidered in gold, she spoke with a clarity and poise that stunned the gathered media. She said simply, "We are not currency, we are not stories for sale." The statement was brief, but its impact was seismic. Palace aides later confirmed that Catherine had approved the statement, viewing it as a necessary defense of the dignity of royal children against the commercial machinery that sought to consume them. This was a direct rebuke to the leaked pitch decks from Meghan's team that had listed Lilibet's potential wardrobe sponsors and appearance fees. It was the monarchy drawing a moral line in the sand, using the voice of the future to condemn the actions of the present. Later that day, Kensington Palace released a single photograph. It showed Lilibet holding Charlotte's hand in the enclosed rose garden at Windsor. There was no caption, no explanation, just the image of the two cousins together and a subtle message, family endures. The subtext was unmistakable. The children belonged to the family, not to the brand. They were safe, they were loved, and they were being shielded from the commercial machinery that had tried to consume them. The photo reassured the public that, while the legal battle raged, the human element was being protected. The final decree arrived on the evening of February 2nd. A royal bulletin, sealed with the insignia of the Lord Chancellor's Court, was issued to the press. It read only one line. "The Crown has resolved custodial dominion under royal guardianship protocols." With those words, Meghan Markle's legal and parental rights over the royal aspects of her children's lives were formally terminated. Princess Catherine was appointed as the chief guardian of their emotional and educational well-being, tasked with overseeing their reintegration into the family fold. The bulletin confirmed that Archie and Lilibet would remain in the United Kingdom under constitutional care until they reached the age of 16. This effectively stripped Meghan of her primary leverage, the children, and placed them beyond her reach for the next decade. The repercussions for Meghan were total. Her £8 million trust was legally voided as a non-sanctioned fund. Her entertainment-based licensing deals involving the children's names were frozen pending a legal audit. Hollywood disowned her. Royal institutions erased her. Prince Harry, reportedly suffering a psychological breakdown in Montecito, was left to negotiate behind palace doors without her. Insiders claim he begged William for a private meeting with the children, offering to come alone, without lawyers, without Meghan. One aide revealed that Harry knows this might be his last chance. He is facing a choice that no father should have to make: the wife who erased his children's identity or the family that rescued them. He is realizing that in his attempt to give his children freedom, he almost sold them into a different kind of captivity. The narrative of the Sussexes, once defined by their desire for freedom and independence, has ended in a cage of their own making. Meghan tried to play poker with the monarchy, using her children as chips to secure her future. But Princess Anne flipped the table. She showed that the children are not chips, they are heirs, they are blood. And the crown protects its own with a ferocity that Hollywood cannot comprehend. As the sun sets over the empty nursery in Montecito, the cameras are gone. The staff has been dismissed. The deals have been canceled. The silence that fills the house is the only thing left, a testament to the high cost of a gamble that failed. The toys are still on the shelves, the beds are made, but the life has been drained from the room, transported across the Atlantic to a place where duty comes before profit. The implementation of the Edwardian Protocol marks a turning point in the history of the modern monarchy. It signals that the institution is willing to use its dormant powers to protect its lineage from commercialization. The Safeguarding Doctrine, drafted by Princess Catherine, is now circulating among constitutional advisors. It outlines firm protections for royal minors, citing Queen Elizabeth II's original custodial precedents and embedding new digital protections against AI cloning and unauthorized image monetization. This document is expected to become the new standard for how royal children are protected in the digital age, ensuring that they can never again be used as leverage in a brand war. It establishes that a royal child's privacy is not a commodity to be traded, but a right to be defended. For Meghan, the loss is absolute. She has lost the titles, the trust funds, the Hollywood deals, and now the custodial authority over her children's public lives. Her attempt to launch a new platform, Arc Legacy, rang hollow as the news of the guardianship order broke. The video of her walking through a rose garden, talking about rewriting narratives, was met with scorn by a public that now saw the reality behind the gloss. The Sussex Kitchen project, the fashion endorsements, the memoir chapters about motherhood, all of it was rendered worthless the moment the crown stepped in. She is left with a brand that has no product and a story that has no ending. She is a general without an army, a queen without a kingdom, left to wander the halls of a mansion that feels increasingly like a mausoleum for her ambitions. Prince Harry remains in a state of limbo, isolated in the guest house of the Montecito estate, separated from his wife and his children. His friends say he is paralyzed by guilt and regret, haunted by the realization that his passivity allowed this to happen. He watched as the commercialization of his family escalated, and he did nothing until it was too late. Now, he must decide whether to fight a losing battle in the American courts or to accept the terms of the crown and return to the UK as a father, but not as a husband. The shepherd boy has cried wolf for the last time, and now he must live with the silence of the empty pastures. He understands that his children are safe, but they are safe from him as well as from her, and that is a bitter pill to swallow. The story of the Sussexes was supposed to be a revolution. It was supposed to be about modernizing the monarchy and finding a new way to be royal. Instead, it became a cautionary tale about the dangers of mixing duty with profit. The crown, battered and tested, has emerged with a new resolve. It has drawn a line around its future, and that line excludes the commercial ambitions of Montecito. The children are safe. The lineage is secure. And the monarchy moves on, leaving the chaos of the last 6 years behind it like a bad dream. Operation Dandelion was not just a rescue mission, it was a restoration of order. And as the world watches the fallout, one thing is clear. You can leave the royal family, but you cannot take the royal family with you. In the days following the decree, the British public rallied around the decision. Polls showed overwhelming support for the Crown's intervention, with 87% of respondents agreeing that the children needed to be protected from commercial exploitation. The image of Lilibet and Charlotte in the garden became a symbol of continuity and healing. It reassured the nation that the future of the monarchy was in safe hands. Princess Anne, the architect of the operation, returned to her duties without fanfare, her victory marked only by the quiet satisfaction of a job well done. She had protected the fortress, and in doing so, she had saved the next generation from the sins of the present. The scene at the Santa Barbara airport during the extraction was one of tense, quiet efficiency. The private jet sat on the tarmac, engines humming, while the convoy of black SUVs approached. There were no flashing lights, no sirens, just the weight of international law pressing down on the tarmac. Meghan's private security team attempted to intervene, citing their own orders, but they were met by the royal legal envoy who presented the guardianship papers, stamped with the seals of both the UK High Court and the US State Department. The reality of the situation dawned on them. This was not a dispute they could win with muscle. It was a diplomatic fait accompli. The children were transferred, frightened but calm, into the care of the pediatric specialists who spoke to them in soft, reassuring tones about going to see their cousins. As the jet lifted off, banking east toward the sunrise in London, a chapter of royal history closed. The experiment of the American branch of the monarchy had failed. The attempt to create a rival court, a monetizable alternative to the House of Windsor, had collapsed under the weight of its own contradictions. The children were returning to the fold, not as celebrities, but as royals, subject to the protections and the constraints that come with that birthright. They were leaving behind the paparazzi drones and the brand deals for the quiet, guarded life of Windsor, where their value would be measured in service, not in clicks. As the dust settles, the question remains: what happens next? Will Meghan fight back with a scorched earth media campaign? Will Harry return to the fold, broken and contrite? The answers are uncertain, but the balance of power has shifted irrevocably. The crown holds the cards, and the Sussexes are left with a hand they cannot play. The era of the global royal is over. The era of the protected heir has begun. And in the quiet halls of Windsor, where the history of kings and queens is written, a new chapter has been added to the archives, one that tells the story of how the monarchy saved itself by saving its children. It serves as a reminder that while individuals may waver, the institution remains a vast, unmoving force that will always act to preserve its future, no matter the cost to the present.